Absolutely loud and clear.
Oh, great, because I was just muted and I had a little bit of a problem unmuting myself.
Fine, not to worry. Anytime such a thing is there, you can just reach out to me.
Sure thing, thank you. So shall we begin? Shall we wait for a
Right
little?
away, right away. So, good evening, one and all. Welcome on behalf of the Bombay Management Association for this Wednesday Wisdom webinar on this very, very important topic of the relevance of coaching in VUCA times. We have none other than the president of the Bombay chapter of the International Coaching Federation, Sri C N MURTY, a distinguished speaker, an expert and authority in this field, and above all, a person who is full of humility and knowledge. It is our privilege to have you, sir, with us this evening. And I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Bombay Management Association and share with you with great delight that we have 80 participants here today in this Zoom meeting, which I think is a milestone by itself. We've usually been having in the range of 70 to 75 participants, but I think it speaks volumes about the topic and your charisma that there are so many people here waiting to eagerly listen to you. May I request my colleague Shripad Ranade, who is an active member of the Bombay Management Association Executive Committee, and whom I believe is the catalyst for this evening's program. When we got into a discussion on having this topic, the first name that came to mind was C N MURTY. So let's find out from Shripad a little more about Mr. MURTY, and then I'll request him to please begin the session. Over to you, Shripad.
Thank you. So it's difficult to introduce Mr. C N MURTY, or CN as he's fondly called in a short manner, but I'll try. So Mr. MURTY is a senior corporate professional. He's a certified executive coach. He holds the PCC credential from the International Coaching Federation, which is known as ICF. But he's also a BTech from IIT Kharagpur, trained in Six Sigma Lean. He has worked with Fortune 500 companies, SMEs, and entrepreneurs across industries and cultures. And he has served in really diverse management and leadership roles, including at the board level. He was with ITC, he was with Huhtamaki PPL. He's trained in leadership personality assessment. He has coached CXOs, MDs, VPs. He has led workshops. Currently, he's an independent director on the board of listed companies. And he's here in his capacity as the current president of the International Coaching Federation's Mumbai Charter chapter. So really, once again, on behalf of BMA, we are very fortunate to listen and to hear all about coaching from Mr. MURTY. Over to you, Meet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shripad and Professor Mani. It's an honor for me to be here with such a distinguished audience from the BMA. I look back to a couple of decades ago when I was a member of the BMA, when I was working for Paper Products in Thane. And it's so good to be back in the company of, of BMA once again. Thank you very much for having invited me here. Coaching is a passion with me. It's been a passion for over 2 decades now, and I have been practicing coaching as a trained professional coach since 2011. As people who know me can vouch, I'm far from being rigorous in my talk. I tend to keep on and on and on. So I'll try and coach myself back into being a little bit more succinct and respectful of the time. So without further ado, let me just share my screen with you, and let's go on to, here we are, talking about the increasing relevance in these days, in these VUCA times. Coaching is something which has been in vogue for many, many years now. So what we will focus on, how is it becoming more and more relevant in these VUCA times? So Shripad and Professor Mani sort of introduced me. This gives a slightly more diverse view of who I am, because I'm not just part of a coach, a professional in coaching, but I also love my photography, and I think it's being more whole rounded that gets me to be able to be more authentic with my clients. A few words about ICF, because Shripad said I'm here as the president of ICF. ICF celebrates 25 years this year. It's a global organization for coaches and for coaching, as all of you know. It's a premier organization which is actually focused on maintaining ethics, celebrating core competencies, and making sure that coaching has a global standard. So we have an independent credential and training program. We also do a lot of networking and development activity with monthly webinars and so on, and creating a lot of learning opportunities to help coaches be up to date with their skills and knowledge. There are over 43,000 ICF members in 147 countries. We have 31,000 ICF credential holders, 143 chapters in 80 countries, and it's a growing organization. In India, we have 5 chapters in Mumbai, Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, and Pune. And we have about 818 credential holders, and probably one of the largest batch of what we call the MCC, or the Master Credential Holders group. We have 43 MCC coaches in our Indian chapters. I want to begin my talk today by just sharing something with you, something that we all know. Tell me, these are questions we've always been asking. They're not new to us. You're all business folk. You're all here as part of a business, a management association. We run successful businesses. And these are questions that are topmost in our minds right through. What can our organization do today that the world of tomorrow needs? So we are looking for change. How do we gear up for tomorrow's needs? So on the one hand, it is performance excellence today, but we are also focused on growth and sustainability for the future. And we have always been asking these questions. If we then come to the beginning of the year, COVID hit us. Total disruption. The world shut down. And it was pandemic with pandemonium prevailing all over the world. So what did that do? All our pundits geared up. So there was a lot of thinking done, lot of analysis done. Scenarios were generated. And you have likely scenarios, plausible scenarios, unlikely scenarios. And then we had organizations like the Harvard Business Review, then McKinsey, Nielsen, and we had, seers like Yuval Noah Harari, all coming up with views and thoughts about how we as leaders and business people, and indeed as citizens, could begin to cope with the world that is changing and the world that was tomorrow. But I ask a question. With all that's been changing around in the world with COVID, the business scenarios that are changing, has COVID-19 changed who we are? And the answer is simple. The last 6 months have changed the context in which we live and work. It's changed our thinking process. We think differently today. Our feelings, our emotions are so different. and our behavior is changing. We wear masks even at home probably. And our response to pressure has changed. I tend to believe that it may have changed who we are at a very intrinsic level, but probably a little bit of more research needs to be done to decide that. Very recently, there was an organization called Lumina Learning, which had done a research on how COVID-19 has affected human beings. And I will share a few of the learnings in the interim report that has just been published. For one, here are some lockdown facts. 8.9% of people have had or believe they have had COVID. And it's very, very interesting to note that in the report, if we just go by the number of people who said that they have COVID positive, the percentage is far higher than what is published by national statistics. So one really doesn't know what this means, but that's the fact, that's the reality. Now, 10% of people have lost their jobs, then people have been made redundant. And in India, 17% have had a mental health issue during lockdown. I know that I have lost a couple of dear friends of mine due to COVID. And if we ask around, about 4.7% of the respondents had lost a close family member or friend to COVID. But having said all this, with all this chaos that is happening around, all this, the great pandemonium that is affecting us, if you really think about it, this is not the first time a crisis ahead has hit us as human beings. Albert Einstein said that in the midst of every crisis lies a great opportunity. We can think about the financial recession, and tomes have been written about the financial recession, how it has affected human beings and how businesses have had to reinvent themselves. In March 2017, Peter Hawkins from the Henley Business School published a report and he described tomorrow's world. Then came the movement. If you just think about it, our old world was disparate. We had different industries. We had financial services, logistics, automotives, consumer products, media and telecoms, each operating in their own arena. And even before COVID, we had begun to find that they were not living as separate entities. Systems were merging. And you had companies like Uber and Tesla and Netflix and Pinterest and you name them. All of them beginning to work in multiple industry areas. So there was interconnectedness of a very, very high order that was happening. And we as human beings, as leaders, as business leaders, had to cope with this change. There were organizations, industries, leaders, and citizens, consumers, who had coped in a way and were beginning to understand what the shift entailed for them. And there were others who struggled and looked to create efficiency and perfection in their own systems. And we have seen consequences in terms of growth, sustenance, and falling by the wayside. VUCA. We talked about the relevance of coaching in a VUCA world. And VUCA is again a word that was invented years ago by the American military. And it talked about how situations could be volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But what does this VUCA world we live in today teach us? And if we ask ourselves this question, what strikes us is very simple. There are only two things that keep changing in the world: complexity and change. You know, when I first got into industry as a professional, the world was simple. Then it got complicated. Then it got complex. And today, the world is chaotic. And what do I mean by this? It was simple because things didn't change. I still remember when I first joined as a management student in ITC, we all ran by management by objectives, MBO. And that was philosophy of management. MBO got dropped by the wayside. And other business processes came into play. And the reason is simple. Change happened, and the time that was required for change became shorter and shorter. So today's chaotic world, change is constant, and change is dramatic, and it is unpredictable. So if we look at ambiguity, uncertainty, and unpredictability, they are just side effects of two basic drivers: how complex and how constant is the change. This is what the outside world teaches us. So if we look at all this happening in the outside world, Prakriti, like to say, what we learn is that if we have to succeed, we have to learn faster than our competitors. We have got to be better than somebody else outside. And then only will we have sustainable competitive advantage. But there is a being inside us. So I invite everybody as a coach to just spend a moment and start thinking about, who are we? If we are leaders who are working in such an unpredictable, constantly changing world, and the future just cannot be guaranteed, and we don't know what is going to hit us by the end of the day, leave alone in a quarter or a year, who are we who's having to deal with this? And this is what we find has happened to us. The VUCA world, the chaotic, when we are hit by the pandemonium, what we are finding today is that we are more reflective than ever before. And we have discomfort. If we analyze this discomfort, it is grief. And grief of different kinds. It's anticipatory grief. Grief because we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. It could be loss of a job, loss of a loved one, loss of income. It could be loss of peace of mind, but we do not know. So anticipatory grief. Then there is loss of control, loss of balance. Slowly grief turns to anger. All of us have read in the newspapers about, and watched messages and so on, and heard about how there has been an increase in domestic violence during the pandemonium. And all this time, we have a racing mind which refuses to rest. And we are affected with anxiety, loss of sleep, and we try to cope and get back to normalcy. Above all, we miss contact. We are more isolated. And these are things that are happening to us. Most importantly, what we yearn for is constancy. We want to master the change, but we want to pause. And that's who we are as humans, leaders, and as people in every system, every walk of life. I want to sum this up. So if I look at VUCA, I see a VUCA and a VUCA prime. The world is going through VUCA. It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous. But if I need to cope with that VUCA world, I need to convert it into VUCA which is meaningful for me. And that is, I need vision, I need understanding, I need clarity, and above all, I need agility. So as human beings, we are struggling to grow these dimensions and build our and reach our potential, achieve our potential in these areas. And that is really what we need to be able to manage the VUCA world. Great. So we all want a very happy, successful tomorrow. We need to survive. We need to grow. We need happiness. We want all that we could dream of tomorrow. And I ask a question. How do we get these results for ourselves? How do we get these results for our organization? How do we get these results for ourselves? So my question here to everybody, and you can use the chat box to put in your answers if you want. Is there any moment of time in your lives when you are not trying to achieve a result? You can just type yes or no. Is there a moment of time in your life when you are not trying to achieve a result? The answer is no. Every moment of our life, and I can see no, no, no. Yeah, I see a couple of yeses. Okay, maybe my question wasn't so clear. But give me one moment of time when you are not trying to achieve a result. Even when we are, trying to be at peace and not do anything, it's something that we want to achieve. It's a result. So here's my next question. If all of us are striving to obtain results, how do you get results? How do you get results? By planning, passion, by knowing. Do you get results by just knowing, just having passion, just by planning? Oh, great. So Diwakar, Dr. Ratnawat, action. There is something that I keep saying, that I've been saying all my life. And I could even patent that. I've always said, good intentions don't give you good results. Good actions do. So it's only actions that give you results. And you go deep down, it's my belief that drives my action. Why do I do what I do? It's because I believe that is what will give me the result. Now you will believe that what I'm saying is wrong, and you have an action plan that will get you the result. So you do that. So it is each person's belief that gets you to do what you have to do, that gives you the result. And where do these beliefs come from? Where do my beliefs come from? My beliefs come from all the experiences that I've had in my life, starting from childhood. I've been through school, college. My parents have instilled in me my values, my thinking, my beliefs, all this put together. I join an organization. and I experience a culture, I experience something, and I believe that this is the right thing to do. I move from one organization to another, and I experience a different culture, and my beliefs can change. So what I do in the new organization changes therein. Now, this is what I call my results pyramid. Experiences create beliefs. Beliefs decide what actions I take, and the actions I take deliver the results the actions will deliver. And if I want a different result, doing more or less of the action A1 will not give me R2. I need to do A2. And I will only do A2 if my belief changes from B1 to B2. And how can my belief change? If my experience is such that I now know that I have to change my belief from B1 to B2. And I drew a line below actions. If you think about it, we in our lives are always operating in the results and action space. That is where our measures of performance are. When we give feedback to a person, it's always about kya kiya tune. We always ask a person, stop doing this, start doing that. We fix goals and results. But how often do we as human beings, as leaders, go below the line and ask ourselves, why am I doing what I did? Why is he doing what he did? And when we do that, we get to the levels of beliefs. So this leads me to culture. So we operate in a culture of experiences, beliefs, and actions. The culture of every system we operate in is defined by the experiences we give each other, by the values, the thoughts that we cherish and promote in that system, and the actions, our behavior. So if we want to change this, we have to start giving different experiences to the people around us, to the system. We have to change our thinking, our beliefs, and we have to change our doing. Now, this becomes relevant to us when we are talking about managing change in a chaotic world. If we, as a person, if we have to manage this change, we will not be able to manage the change effectively by only operating in the results and action area. We need to delve deeper into ourselves. The pandemonium has helped us become more reflective. And when we say we are being more reflective, we are in actual fact tending to go down and dig deep, asking ourselves the question, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why does this matter to me? And we find it difficult to find answers there. So here we are. So if we want to move from R1 to R2, and we want to be successful in a changed world, we need to have different beliefs driven by the new experiences so that we take different actions. Difficult for any one of us to do this on our own, because becoming reflective, being able to dig deep into ourselves to understand underlying motivations, underlying obstacles, kleshas, like the Yoga Sutra says, is a difficult task for the best of us. And this is where coaching helps. So let's demystify coaching a little bit. We are all familiar with telling. Telling starts from school. A teacher tells us. A teacher teaches. So there is a subject. And the teacher tells us, explains to us concepts, things, and knowledge, and drives knowledge into us. And from being told by our parents and by our teachers, we start solving our problems, and then we graduate to giving advice. And from giving advice comes offering guidance. And then we move towards asking questions and helping a person solve their own problem. Now, if you look at this transition from left to right, it's all about how knowledge is gained. At the left end, knowledge is pushed into us. When we are asking questions and helping a person solve our problems, we are drawing knowledge into ourselves. So coaching shifts from having knowledge pushed into ourselves into a zone where a coach helps you learn, bring knowledge into yourself. And how do you bring knowledge into yourself? By reflecting on the questions that are posed. By thinking about the answers. Getting into a space of reflection, turmoil, and creating new perspectives. And from this new thinking comes new ways of understanding. So coaching is a process where, as a coach, the belief is that each person has a potential which is inbuilt within ourselves, within himself or herself. A person is basically capable, is knowing, has the intellectual ability to understand, but one doesn't understand because of shrouds, clouds. And it's like peeling an onion. So in a process of coaching, you think deep into your issue, your problem, and you peel out layer by layer to come to the core, which is the essence of the knowledge. And that is how coaching works. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So here is a coaching continuum. So as a coach can work in the area of skills. And skill coaching is in developing new skills in a coachee, which is basically what happens when you are talking about, say, tennis coaching or sports coaching and so on. And then you can have performance coaching, where the whole focus is on the doing, on performance, results, outputs, outcome. When you're coaching on development, you're getting a person to become bigger and larger in life. So it is on development of a whole person. And at the right extreme, you have transformative coaching. And in the process of transformative coaching, as a coach, you are creating shifts in a person, where a person begins to see things in a very different way, sees light and new insights, and then is able to understand how these insights give him opportunities to do something differently. So there are 4 ways in which we can approach coaching. In chaotic times, why does a client need a coach? So if we see this, The answer is very simple. It's always to discover oneself and to change behavior. I've been coaching for so many years now, and even today, every time a coachee comes across and says, and we start a coaching journey, and the question is, what would you like to talk about, and what would your goals be? What would you like to see as change at the end of a coaching journey? The coachee would always come up and say, I want to change my behavior. I need to develop executive presence. I need to be able to close deals in the marketplace. And I'm not able to do that. I need to be able to develop better relationships. It's always about change of behavior. But then you go a little deeper into it and ask a question. Okay. Fine. You explain to me what you want to change. Or what is it you specifically want to focus on? And what does the coachee do? He talks for another 10 minutes trying to give you anecdotal responses to what he wants to change. You ask a question, what is the real issue here? And oftentimes the real issue is something very different. The reason why I do not have good relationships, okay, you know what? The real issue is I somehow can't stop myself from thinking. I don't listen. But it's seldom that a coachee would first come up and say, I don't listen. So you have to get to root change. Real issues and real goals. Then you have to, as a client needs a coach because everybody is looking for answers. I want answers. And we are all in jhatpat age. We want answers like that. But there is a difference between seeing and looking. Looking for answers actually presupposes that I know what I'm looking for, if you think about it. I'm looking for something and I know I've got it when it sort of gels with what I feel what I think I'm looking for. So there is, one is sort of pre-aligned to what I'm looking for. But when I'm starting to see, what I see can come out of the world around. I do not know where it comes from. It just comes to me. I see something. I become a seer. So a coach needs to help a person understand the difference between looking and seeing. Because it is seeing that helps a person work on his problems in a more effective way. Gaining new perspectives, understanding obstacles that keep us lost. And there can be 5 types of obstacles. One can be knowledge. The other can be fears. Third can be attachments. I'm so attached to something I just can't give up. Ask a smoker to give up smoking. Ask me to give up sweets. And then comes aversions. I can't touch garlic for anything, however good it might be for my health. I hate garlic. I can't stand it. A simple example. And then I have my ego. I'm lost. Who says I'm lost? He doesn't know what he's talking about. It's not me. And these are obstacles, the kleshas that we talk about. We need to know who I am. A coach is there to help you know who you are. reality, all of us know this. There's nothing complex or complicated about what a coachee looks for, a client looks for. It's just that there are rose-tinted glasses that keep the person from being able to actually discover these for himself or herself. So it becomes necessary. So then comes the need to explore these in partnership with a coach. Okay, deep transformative coaching is the process that helps a coachee understand all this. It helps you create a space for yourself. It helps you slow down. It helps you reflect. And it helps you dig deeper within yourself. In reality, it is all about just this, going slow to go better. We live in a fast-paced world, and being able to cope with change requires us to slow down. And the need to slow down and more reflective and dig deeper to discover more substance within ourselves and in the future is the essence of what is required today. And it is deep transformative coaching that allows this. We will be, when we do this, we are swimming against the tide. And that is what a good coach helps us do, because all this doesn't come to us naturally. You know, ladies and gentlemen, if I were to think about it, there is nothing new here. All coaching is this. This is coaching that has been practiced for years and years and years. But why has it become more relevant these days? It's become relevant these days for this, I believe, for the simple reason that the world today doesn't tell us what we should be doing tomorrow. We don't know what we should be doing tomorrow. So if I sit down and try to think about what do I need to do differently to face tomorrow, it's more than likely that I'll get lost. To be able to handle a chaotic, unpredictable tomorrow, I need to first reflect on what I want. What are my needs? What will make me happy? What will mean success for me? And that requires me to do this. A totally different behavior from something that we have been used to all our lives. And we succeed when we are able to build these strengths within ourselves. Change of this order requires deep reflection. And that deep reflection is best possible with the help of a dialogue, which will be a coaching dialogue. So let's look at this. This is exactly what the Vedanta tells us, the Yoga Sutra tells us. We have to keep peeling away every sheath. We have to get deeper and deeper and deeper into ourselves to discover the truth. And a good coach is one who helps you dig deeper within yourself, as these concentric circles tell you. Given all this, this is what the ICF definition of coaching is, therefore. It is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. Okay. Everybody needs a coach. So let's spend just a few minutes listening to Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt, two of our revered leaders of industry. And here's what they have to say about coaching. I hope you can hear this.
All okay.
Everyone needs a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast, or a bridge player. My bridge coach, Sharon Osberg, says there are more pictures of the back of her head than anyone else's in the world. Sorry, Sharon. Here you go. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve.
For years, I've received so many different kinds of advice, I don't know where to start. One that comes to mind is to have a coach. Our board member in 2002, John Doerr, said, you need a coach. And I said, well, I don't need a coach. I'm an established CEO. Why would I need a coach? Is something wrong? He said, no, you need a coach. Everybody needs a coach. So, every famous athlete, every famous performer has somebody who's a coach. Somebody who can watch what they're doing and say, is that what you really meant? Did you really do that? They can give them perspective. The one thing people are never good at is seeing themselves as others see them. The coach really, really helps.
Okay. I'm going to just pause for a moment over here and make a comment. Okay. Leaders like Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt have always had coaches. And there have been, CEOs and CXOs of many, many leading organizations, even in India today, who have coaches working with them. What I have found in these COVID times is that the frequency with which leaders come and get in touch with their coaches has significantly increased. And many coaches, many leaders today have a coach not for 6 sessions and 7 sessions and 8 sessions. They have coaches who are their coaches. And they feel quite free to come up and say, hey, I need to explore something with you. And they come up and just share and open up and discuss and have a coaching conversation. And that is the change that has happened even in my coaching experiences in the past few months. Where coaches who have been put in touch with me by their organizations for coaching, and I have signed on for 6 and 7 or 8 or 10 sessions with them. But they come up and say, hey, you know what, can I just give you a call in between if I get in touch, if I require some support? And they do that. A 15-minute call turns to a half an hour call. And this is something that just tells me that leaders who have experienced coaching see the power of coaching and require and understand that more coaching is required to meet the challenges of today's chaotic world. Okay, so let me just get back to my share screen and just run through the presentation quickly before I answer some questions, because I have been seeing some very great questions on the chat box.
That's right.
Okay. So what does coaching do? A coach creates awareness. Awareness of a real issue and a real problem is what I said. A coachee can come up and say, I want to talk about this, and he will talk for 10 minutes about what he wants to talk about. But if you ask him to distill that into what is the essence of the change that he's looking for, oh, it takes a lot of thinking. And that is where the coach helps in goal setting, in creating awareness. And once that awareness is created, an understanding of the real issue. What are the obstacles? What are the problems? What are the underlying fears, beliefs, values, feelings? And you're getting into a deep level. Is there a pattern of behavior here? So it's the understanding. And from the understanding comes out the light bulb. A new perspective. And done with a whole body, whole mind, holistic mind. The left brain and the right brain, the logical and the imaginative, the creative mind. Put it all together and you got an idea of what I need to be doing. And that is the application. Once with the application, you get into the celebration. And the celebration which says, I'm now embedding the learning into myself. And with that embedded knowledge, I become committed to my change. So this becomes the cycle, the coaching cycle that a coach would go through. So an effective coach's, and I stress the word effective, the effective coach's role and process is what? He's a catalyst for change. The client changes. It's the client's responsibility to change. The coach can only be a catalyst. And he recognizes that he's a catalyst. So he leaves the ownership for change in the hands of the client. But he partners the client in a process. And that process is thinking. The process is being creative. The process is looking at things in a different light. And he inspires a client to maximize personal and professional potential. A coach learns to be away from himself. It's not what a coach wants. It's not what a coach knows. Many people believe that if you hire a coach, the coach must come from the same domain of knowledge that you have. In reality, that makes the coach's life that much more difficult, because then he becomes God. And a coach is not God. A coach is a mere curious individual who's so curious, he keeps asking powerful questions to learn and co-create a solution. So the coach will then focus on a process of setting goals, creating outcomes, and managing change. He becomes a guide. He is not a preacher. He doesn't give advice. He doesn't share. He may mentor, but that's outside coaching. And a coach has 100% faith in one's abilities, potentials, and he reflects this back to create aha moments in the client. And a coach who transforms works at a systemic level, sees a person as a whole. He works at both the doing and the being level. And I talked about this a lot during the last few minutes. He clarifies issues and goals. He listens at very deep levels. And we, as coaches, we keep saying that listening can be at 4 levels. What is said, what is not said, what is felt, what is intended to be said but not said, and many more. He asks powerful questions that create shift in being, and he helps link new knowledge to behavior shifts. And he helps a client with both abhyas and vairagya, 2 classic words that you will find in our Vedantas. And abhyas is often translated as practice. And I believe that abhyas is not practice. Abhyas is a lot more than practice. Because you practice on a tennis court, But when you are in abhyas, you are practicing in your subconscious after dinner in your drawing room, gripping a tennis racket slightly differently with a different stance and practicing a new stroke. So that is abhyas. And vairagya is the willingness to shed, to sacrifice, to give up. And this alone will get a person to change. Above all, a coach is a trusted and empathetic partner in a journey towards perfection. Whose perfection? My perfection. And we may talk about a business, a life, and all else, but it is each one of us individually who have to grow up to make our business and our systems better. I'm just going to stop this and bring us back to the ICF. The ICF is a body that actually supports coaches in being able to do all this well. Okay. It just helps coaches become more effective. And in fact, during this COVID times, there have been many seminars and learning events where coaches have got together and debated and discussed ways of improving their coach practice to be able to manage new challenges of a COVID time. Okay, so we believe that transforming life and helping society thrive is what's our purpose. Ethics plays a very key role in a life of a coach and in the practice of a coach. And being ethical and ensuring, basic stuff like confidentiality and adherence to stated practices and integrity and so on is extremely important for a coach to become a member of the ICF. And well, we have the resources and the worldwide experience to create change and personal growth. Okay. I'm going to stop this by just sharing with you some information, and I'm sure we will also pass on more informations where all of us can get together and get in touch with a coach in the ICF, if this attracts. Okay. So here we are, and so we do have. We have just about touched 6 o'clock, but can we take a 5-10 minutes of questions, Professor?
Absolutely. I must first place on record my appreciation for the wonderful session. Absolutely spellbinding. And I must also share with you and on behalf of BMA that we're extremely delighted that you're the first batsman who's hit the century in our Wednesday Wisdom webinars. We've consistently had 100 participants today throughout the evening. And this is something which I think will go on record as a record-breaking performance from your side. Thank you very much. And I'm sure all of us had a wonderful journey into understanding the whole idea about coaching. As you rightly said, there are a couple of interesting questions which I'll try to collate. In the meantime, I'm going to take the liberty of asking one of our past presidents, who's also a very active person in the field of training, leadership development, and mentoring, Nirmala Mehendale, to just say a few words as a kind of summary to what we have gone through in the last 45 minutes. Over to you, Nirmala. You can just unmute and speak.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Murthy, for putting all this so briefly. I, being a person in the counseling and coaching field, understand how much it's challenging to be a coach. So one thing that I'd like to bring up, which you brought up too, which is about the coach himself being authentic and being unbiased. And I always find, putting that hat separately, especially when I'm talking of developmental coaching, is the biggest challenge. see, and I'm continuously working on that myself. So whatever you've said is, the questioning and the knowing when you've actually hit an aha moment is such a beautiful aspect of coaching. And I can also relate to the point you made where a coachee phones in the middle of the coaching process because there's an email that he's just received and it's triggered a whole thing, and he remembers you saying pause and then says, I don't know how to respond. And all those moments are extremely touching, extremely fulfilling. So to be a coach comes with such great responsibility because you're another individual's life and an individual who begins to trust the process and the individual who herself wants to find answers. And a lot of individuals in the Indian system resist coaching initially, in my experience, I can be wrong, because they'd like answers to be ready. And so when you keep questioning and you keep digging and you keep making the individual answer and struggle with finding answers, and once that individual does that, I think that's when the magic happens. And thank you so much for thank you. I mean, it was a pleasure listening to you and to, reflect back on the various sessions that, I've gone through, and thank you for your wisdom. And I think on behalf of the Bombay Management Association, it was a very well spent evening for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Professor Mani, for inviting me to say a few words.
Oh, you're welcome, Nirmala. I'll now move on to some of the questions. One of the first questions, Murthy sir, is something very fundamental. Could you briefly tell us a little more of the difference between coaching and mentoring?
Sure. Professor, mentoring, when do I become a mentor? When I'm as gray-haired as I am, when I have had a lot of experience and someone comes to me and he says, C N, I'm stuck with a problem and I'm struggling to find an answer and I just don't know what to do. Can you help me? So I doff my cap and I think, I give him a long look and I say, I remember a time 20 years ago when I was faced with a similar situation. And here's what I did. And this is what happened. And I narrate an anecdote. And from that anecdote, I share gleanings of my learning at that point of time. Great stuff. He listens to me spellbound because he loves the story, and we all love stories. And he's impressed with the knowledge that is being shared. And he comes and says, wow, now I know what to do. I have become a mentor and I have shared my knowledge. So if you looked at those obstacles, the first obstacle to being able to do something differently, to grow, to move along, is knowledge. And a mentor is a great source for that knowledge. But at another level, I know, but knowing is not going to help me with my doing. Because I know and then I try to do, and something happens and I either give up or I get stuck or I'm lost. And it's likely to happen because the situation I am in today is not that in which the mentor was at his point of when he experienced it. The circumstances, the system today is different from the system then. So there are so many other things that are different. And I, as a person, am not my mentor.
True.
I have my fears, I have my thoughts, my feelings, my values, my beliefs, which are different. And a mentor may not, and I'm being careful with my words, may not address that.
Sure. I understand.
It gets into that level.
All right. The next interesting question is when we are looking at expecting a change in behavior as part of the outcomes of a coaching process, could you highlight how do we measure some of these changes?
Well, that's a very interesting question. And HR heads normally ask me, what's the ROI of coaching? Okay. So the real truth is that there is no ROI of coaching, because ROI is a metric. And an ROI is in the logical space. It's numbers, it's measurement. But when we are talking about coaching, coaching works at a very deep level. Okay, and so coaching changes beliefs. Coaching changes us, our behavior at a very deep level. And it's not just in one specific, it's not just, the goal and the issue that you are dealing with in a coaching journey is not the only one that is impacted. Okay, so if one asks, how do I measure whether a coaching has been effective or not? Honestly, it is by looking at how the person is using his potential differently. What has changed in the person, his behavior, his saying, his communication? And as a result of that change in behavior and communication, how are results being impacted? So I don't think there is a straight line answer to this.
Fair, but I think you've given us the right direction as to how one should think about trying to measure this very difficult parameter that actually people do expect at the end of the process.
True.
We also have with us Ashok Sharmaji, one of our stalwarts of the Bombay Management Association, a very, very senior professional from industry and a former past president. Sharmaji, over to you for your observations and any thoughts that you would like to share.
I must congratulate you and Professor Murthy for the excellent presentation that we just saw. Very, very illuminating and informative. My only concern is that how do we promote coaching in the industry, in the sense that not many people really understand the benefits of coaching, and they really do not engage the proper people. So while we have excellent coaches, I think we need to do a bit of, if I may say so within inverted comma, a bit of marketing or persuasion with the companies, with the industry, so that coaching benefits everybody. Coaching benefits employees, coaching benefits company, coaching. So therefore, it must become more, I would say, popular in the Indian companies rather more than what it is today. Thank you.
That's a very valid comment you made, sir, and it is so true. And this is in reality what we in ICF are also seized with.
Yeah.
My answer, at least this is the way my thoughts go on it. It's very simple. I always go back to my results pyramid. If we want coaching to be accepted and become more accepted in industry today, we need to give people experiences that will change their beliefs. So if we just tell a person that, coaching is good for you, and this is how coaching will help, and we explain and tell, it doesn't work. So people need to experience it. And experiences can be of two types. It can be direct experience, and it can be through indirect experience. So a lot of storytelling helps. And today, it is good that because of the work that bodies like ICF and AMC and a number of other coaching bodies are around, professional bodies are doing, we are promoting the awareness of coaching. And one of the things that we would really, really love to do is work with associations like BMA, SHRM, NHRD, and all the associations of professionals. And because we are all professional bodies together who have the same objective, which is the betterment of our communities. So if we can get together to do this, probably our hands will be strengthened.
Thank you.
Great, and I'm looking forward to more of such collaborations in time to come between BMA and ICF. I'm also delighted to share that with us today are many faculty from several management institutions, not only from Mumbai, but all over the country. I'd like to invite Dr. Satish Chandra. He has a question to ask. Over to you, Satish.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, I'm a faculty. I'm Dr. Satish Chandra from ITN Group of Institutions, Warangal. So I worked in industry, and then when I came to teaching, I could able to understand the difference subtly as a formality is a formal activity, coaching is more. But rather than when we observe from the industry, it has been observed that a faculty has to get acquaintance with the mentoring also. Like Dronacharya given a coaching to Arjuna. Whereas Krishna done the mentoring, I feel it's something like. Am I right, sir? In the words. So my question is that, like, as we understand that today's student is looking for coaching anyway, that's a formal activity we do in institutions as a faculty in the classroom or in different pedagogies I will be doing. But mentoring a student is really becoming a very difficult task. Why? Because multidisciplinary and people these days, the students are more navigated and certainly undirectional. So as a faculty, we face some difficulty in mentoring. So how we can improve that mentoring skill? And I may not be saying skill also, but how can we good at that as a faculty to my level?
Professor, I just think a little bit about what you just said. And you talked about what does Krishna do? Does he mentor or does he coach? Okay, and that's a very interesting question you asked. And in reality, over the past few years, my journey into becoming a better coaching professional took me into the studies of Vedanta, the Yoga Sutra, and trying to understand the Gita a little better. And one of the things that I seem to have picked up is that when I go through the Gita verse or or even the Tattva Bodha, okay, if I go through any one of these, what he's telling, what is being talked about is about getting you to become more aware of the greatness that is there within you. And all these is done by giving you anecdotes, by giving you metaphors, and by getting you to think differently. So here comes the question. In English, we have a label. We call it coaching, we call it mentoring. And to my mind, labels are the bane of society. We do not understand labels, but we use labels. As an engineer, I always used to say, you should become a master of tools. You should know how to use tools, but never allow them to become, become your master. A hammer in everybody's hand makes you see everything as a nail to be hammered on the head. So it can't be that. You have to be someone who can understand the thing. And you said in industry, we need mentoring. The best leaders are those who have a coaching attitude, who ask questions and who don't tell you, who don't share. The most powerful insights in my team member is when I ask him the simple question, what else do you think you can do? I remember people would come to me for solutions when I was the CEO of a company and say, sir, I have a problem. And I said, great. So what's the solution? And they said, I don't have a solution. I said, I'll tell you what, think of 3 solutions and come back to me. Not 1, not 2, but 3. And the reason 3 is simple, because if you have 1 solution, you know what the answer is. Why come to me? If you have two, you're in a dilemma. Solve your dilemma. Do your analysis. But if you have three, you have to make a choice. So then come and let's think about it. We'll talk about it because there are multiple options. So you're, as a leader, you're now creating that ability in your team member to think multiple options, have different perspectives. And that is coaching. Because you believe that he can come up with his answers. You believe he has the answers in him. And for something within himself, he's holding himself back. And you inspire him to come with thoughts and processes. Now, is this mentoring? Is it coaching? Honestly, I don't know. ICF itself says, do not mentor when you coach. Yes, it's a strict rule. And there are many times when we as coaches debate. You know, my client, he always wants an answer. And he sees my gray hair and he says he knows. Why doesn't he tell me? And he says, what do you think I should do in the midst of a coaching session? And as a coach, I often say, what a great question. And you know what? I have a thought or two. But do you mind if I share this at the end of a coaching session? Right now, let's go create a solution together. And so I'm that much. So you see, am I coaching? Am I mentoring? I can do both to bring about change. How effective depends upon how good I am as a coach. I don't know if I answered your question, Professor.
Fair, but I guess at the end of the day, what one is looking at is what is the impact of the effort. And that is when Nirmala spoke about those wow moments where you feel so good at the end of the process. Is a deep sense of satisfaction of having contributed something meaningful to the career journey or the life journey of that individual, if I may say so. Yeah. I'd like to also acknowledge the presence of several of my own team members. Shripad Ranade, of course, you all have met him. There's Jagmohan Rishi, there's Chintan Oza, there is RSR Murthy. All of them very, very senior professionals, and it's wonderful to have such a great gathering of all such people. Also have with us several senior members of the Bombay Management Association. I've introduced some of them already. I also noticed Ernest Fernandez there with us, another very senior marketing professional of repute, of course, a former past president also. Mr. Ernest Fernandez, would you like to share a view or ask a question?
Yes, I'd like to say that the point made by Professor Murthy that mentoring is not just a few sessions or just teach me this in 6 sessions. Mentoring, if it's to change beliefs and if it is to result in a productive outcome, has to be something which the person who's being mentored accepts and trusts on a long-term basis. And I think that is the only way that mentoring can really bring about the change. But for that, the client has got to be sufficiently trusting and aware of what mentoring can achieve. What I particularly liked also about Professor Murthy's talk was that he related it to COVID. And that's a situation in which industry now faces. So I thought it was very practical, and I certainly gained a lot from it. Thank you, BMA, and thank you, Professor Mani.
You're most welcome. Thank you, sir. As they rightly say, all good things have to come to a pause. I don't like to use the word end because I think learning goes on forever. Many of you have been asking me, how do you reach the ICF? I've already put in the website link of ICF there. Of course, there's a feedback form from BMA. You're welcome to share your views with us on what other programs we could bring for you, which would be meaningful and useful to all the participants. As we always do in such BMA programs, we like to have a group photograph, though in the virtual mode. So I'm going to request everybody to put on your videos. Habitually, we also allow about 2 minutes for people to get ready, if you understand what I'm saying, because I know many people are working from home. And while you get ready, I'd also like to request the person whom I call the frequent attender. I'm sure you've heard of frequent flyer programs in airlines. We have a frequent attendee program of BMA, though we don't advertise it. If there's one person who's perhaps attended almost all the 22 sessions that we've organized every Wednesday, it is our former past president, Indrapal Singh Ji, who himself is a veteran from industry, a very long innings with Godrej, and of course now enjoying his second innings with consulting and spending time in reading and researching. We'd love to request Indrapal Ji to sum up and say a few words while we get ready for our group photograph. Over to you, Indrapal Ji. We can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I think fantastic session. Very rarely you come across such a lot of clarity. Very necessary in this VUCA times, as it was shown in one of the first slides. And then, of course, the process of coaching and Professor Murthy's answers to various things. How do I select the coach and what role, the difference between mentor, coaching, etc. All very useful and something to reflect upon. I have one different comment to offer, that companies spend a lot of money on training, but I had read somewhere a paper in which they had proved that the effects of training, like fast-acting crocin, etc., they don't last much. Typically, the forgetting curve is so steep that I think within 7 to 14 days, most of the training vanishes. And when the training is combined with coaching, the effect is long-lasting. In fact, the study showed that the effect of training is multiplied by 1.4 times, and the what you call the forgetting time of that process is far too longer, maybe 3 to 4 times. So instead of having a training and development function, we have to have training and coaching functions, where training dollars are combined with coaching dollars, or training money is combined with coaching money, to retain the learnings for a longer period of time and amplify them and bring about the real change, the transformation that Professor Murthy has spoken about. So I think this could be a very major thing. It could be an area of research, or by BMA members and the academics who are attending here, that how does coaching really work. But I think coaching adds a value to a person in a very big way, because after all, becoming a better version of ourselves is our goal, to be happier, etc. So if coaching can trigger off such a process, I think that money would be very well spent. And I think it's upon all of us to promote coaching in a very big way, rather than debate about the semantics of mentoring, coaching, etc. But to become better version of ourselves would be the key. So thank you, Professor Murthy, to ask me to share a few words, and that's about I have to say. Great session, and I hope people who attended 100 plus, they will take benefit of more such sessions which you have planned for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Indrapalji. And I must tell you, a couple of people did reach out to me saying that they could not enter this meeting. I realized that our Zoom account has a limit of 100. And as I said, this was the first time he hit a century thanks to C N Murty. But I can assure you, thanks to his cooperation, we have recorded this session, and it will go live on the YouTube channel of Bombay Management Association in a couple of days. So all those who attended this session will get an email once that happens. Feel free to share it with those who missed this session and can still get to learn what actually happened here. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Coach Anita from ICF. She's been kind enough to also put in contact details for ICF, including her number, email ID. Please reach across to her if you want to migrate from this learning journey into the coaching journey, if I might say so. I'd like to acknowledge our wonderful woman power of the Bombay Management Association Secretariat. You know, we have a team of 5 Secretariat members, and all of them are women. And they really power every activity that happens in the Bombay Management Association. May I request my colleagues, Oindrila and Lakshmi, to get ready with the digital cameras so that we capture all of us who are present here. You'll have to be a little patient. There are 4 screens. So keep smiling, because we don't know when the camera comes to your screen. And then it might just about happen you're not smiling when we clicked your photo. Well, jokes apart, so let's get ready for this capturing of this lovely moment that all of us spent together and hit this 100, as I said. Over to you, Lakshmi and Oindrila.
while they are getting ready with the cameras, may I just thank BMA,
Please.
Professor Mani, and all the the organizing team, including Shripad, for having organized this, invited me to be present. I'm deeply honored, and I hope it's been useful for all of you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was an absolute honor for us. And I think we broke 2 records today, the century of participation. And this is the first program which has gone to 90 minutes without participants disappearing. Otherwise, we normally end up in 1 hour and 10 minutes because I always pride myself in saying we start on time and end on time. But here was an occasion where no one complained that we were getting late. And I think that speaks volumes about the wonderful sharing that you did. May I request Shripad, who initiated this whole program for us, to have the signing off remarks on behalf of BMA. And before I do that, may I just inform you that the next Wednesday, we have yet another very interesting session. This is being promoted by Kelp HR Services, and the topic is preventing sexual harassment at work. And I think this is becoming even more important in the current scenario as we are going through. So do ensure that you are there with us next Wednesday. Day after tomorrow on Friday, as part of our EMDP's Friday Fundamentals, we have a session on decoding the new normal. This is being presented by Sheffer Ruya Associates, led by Dr. Ganesh Natarajan, who many of you, I am aware, have heard already, but he is currently on the IMA Council and leading several such initiatives on post-COVID recovery for industry. So please make it a point to register for this program. Those of us who are in this program will get more email details. So look forward to seeing you there also. Over to you, Shripad, for the signing up remarks.
Thank you, Professor Mani. First of all, thank you to everyone who's attended and stayed on for something like half an hour more than our intended time. But that's really a tribute to the kind of sharing that we heard from Mr. Murthy. And some of the things that we heard, and I was taking notes, were really remarkable. We heard about thinking about who we are in the pandemic rather than thinking all the time about the pandemic. And I love that results pyramid, and somebody left brain like me looking at that and seeing C1 to C2. I can relate to that. The engineer in me loves C1, C2. I can understand, I can remember that. And you also spoke about not confusing it with just skills coaching, which a Virat Kohli needs, but also transformating coaching, which also Virat Kohli seems to have had. And you spoke about the world today not telling us what to do for tomorrow, and hence the need for us to pause and go deeper and go slower. And last but not the least, all of us also heard about what is an effective coach, and there was some discussion about making sure that you go to an effective coach. And therefore I and Ms. Anita Sajde, also from the ICF, who are here, we would also then say that please make sure that you're going to an effective coach, somebody who's credentialed, somebody who's trained for it, and somebody who therefore is able to keep your best interests in mind. Thank you once again on behalf of Bombay Management Association to Mr. C N Murthy, or fondly CN as we know him, and to everyone who's attended today, and also to all our past presidents for their words of wisdom. Thank you everyone very much.
Thank you everyone. Stay safe and stay blessed.